Hello and welcome to another episode of Team Blush, and welcome to part 2 of the KA24ET build series. We will not be working with the block today due to some life circumstances. We are not in the typical garage that we would be working on it in. Instead, we are out at a friend's place. As you can see over here to my left, this is Team Yeti Racing's little compound and workshop, and they have allowed us to use this space for this video, in which we will be doing a full Catback exhaust system. So we will be changing the original exhaust that came on the 1989 Nissan 240SX and changing it out for an ISR high flow cat that will meet up to an ISR muffled mid pipe. And then, due to the way that I wanted to have this gold Megan Racing exhaust tip, we will have to bridge the gap between this muffled mid pipe and this exhaust exit by fabricating a little bit of exhaust pipe in between. So to do that, we have some vibrant exhaust flanges, and we bought this builder's kit. I believe it was on Amazon. At the very end of this entire series, I will do a video on where all this stuff came from, the prices, etc. At the end of the video, we will do a sound comparison between the original exhaust that came on the S13 and this new setup. So without further ado, let's jump into the meat of the video. Next time you see us, we will be underneath the car attempting to get the original exhaust off. We'll see you under there. We have gone ahead and gotten the car up on jack stands, and it is secure. Apologies for the car being dirty. We've been using it the last 2 weeks and have not had the chance to clean it. So the first thing that we will need to be doing to get this old exhaust off is get this catalytic converter shield off. Looks like that should be 4 bolts right here on the other side, right here, and right here. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. These look pretty rusted, so hopefully they don't snap off. We unfortunately will not be able to get an angle on getting these bolts off because our camera mounting system does not fit under the car very well. So we'll get back to you once we get these 4 bolts off and then see what we are doing next. Wow, and wouldn't you believe, the rusted bolts that held in the heat shield came out perfectly fine. So that gives us access to our rusty flange bolts. These look a bit scarier, but we'll go ahead, we'll hit those with some WD-40, some penetrating oil, maybe even heat them up if they are being really stubborn, and should be able to get this out relatively quickly. We'll update you when these are all loosened. As you can see, with the pry bar sitting there and this long pipe and the hammer sitting underneath the catalytic converter, the 4 bolts that were mentioned in the last clip are being a pain, just like we expected. So what we're going to do now, we're going to use some impact tools, but in order to get the clearance to get the exhaust down out of the way and to get clearance for the catalytic converter flanges, and ignore the mid pipe right now, we were just setting it down, kind of seeing where it was going to lie once we have this installed. But in order to gain the clearance for that catalytic converter, we came all the way back to the very back of the exhaust up to this exhaust hanger. This has a bolt through it on the other side that we need to go ahead and take out. Then we're hoping that the muffler will just slip right out of these exhaust hangers. Then we can drop the exhaust down, and that should give us clearance for the catalytic converter. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And also, one thing to note, the phone will cooperate with lighting. If you can see right here, there is an unused exhaust hanger. So that being unused, and we did not mess with this when we were doing our original transmission swap video, but this right here, we're not sure if this is original from factory or not. So as much as we're trying to make the end video clip be a difference between completely factory and the new exhaust, we cannot take into account for what this actually may be and if this is an original exhaust piece or not. That out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get the clearance on these catalytic converter flange bolts. So we'll be right back. Okay, just as we expected, we got the muffler pulled off of its hangers, and we got the nut taken off of that. And as you can see, there is enough play in the system currently that we will be able to get to the catalytic converter flange bolts and get an impact on that. So go ahead, and now we will go ahead and get the impact on those. Just wanted to update you, show you that that did indeed work. Well, we ended up getting a little carried away with getting those bolts simply off of the catalytic converter, and we completely got it out, but not without that impact. If you are going to do this job yourself, this car in general is pretty rust free, so this was an easier time than I believe most would have on their own, again depending on if yours is relatively rust free or not. But that impact was definitely a lifesaver in this situation. Now here are the two catalytic converters side by side. As you can see, with the OEM catalytic converter, the cell structure inside of it is very small, and with the ISR performance, you can see that the cell structure is in a different shape and is much larger. And the cool thing about this ISR performance high flow cat is that it just fits up. This was not a 3-inch exhaust system from factory, and we will be upgrading to that. So you would think that these old catalytic converter exhaust flanges would not work, but as you can see, they are the exact same size. So as a little bonus to the video, since there really isn't that much that can be actually watched working on it, it's only a few bolts, it's really easy, it's one of the easiest things for a beginner to do on their own car. But as a bonus, we're going to go ahead and throw this high flow cap back on, and then we're going to put the original exhaust back on as well, so you can hear what the difference is if you were just to purchase this high flow cat. So really quick, we'll get those 4 bolts on this high flow cat underneath the car, and then we'll get the old exhaust back on. Another nice thing that almost forgot to talk about when talking about the differences between these two catalytic converters is that the ISR Performance catalytic converter comes with brand new hardware and the correct hardware. This is the old hardware that came off of the catalytic converter, and as you can see, this nut is not the type that bites into the metal as it should. And really, would you want to reuse that, especially after having an impact on it? You can see that the head of that is just all boogered up. So it's really nice that the ISR Performance High Flow Cat gives you these extra pieces so that you're not having to go to the hardware store to get it yourself. Hello, dog. The new catalytic converter is installed, so let's grab a quick sneak peek at that. That is about as bolt-in as it gets in terms of any aftermarket car part that I've ever put on the S13. The fitment is absolutely perfect, and it even comes, like I said, with all of the bolts and hardware. So, take you to the back of the car, fire up the car, and we'll see if it sounds different, if at all, to having the quote-unquote restrictive OEM catalytic converter. Went ahead and pulled the rest of the OEM exhaust out of the car, and you can see the secondary reason why we are replacing this exhaust, because it is completely Swiss cheesed. And even though this made the car sound pretty cool on deceleration, there was lots of pops and crackles, it just isn't the best. So another reason that we are changing that out. Next to it, I've laid our mid-pipe, the ISR muffled mid-pipe, and then just for my own interests, went ahead and placed some of my stainless steel exhaust pipe and the Megan Racing exhaust just to see what kind of shape we're looking at in terms of what we need to fabricate. And actually surprised, it doesn't look like there will be much fabrication needed. But with that being said, I have gone ahead and practiced on the TIG welder just a little bit the day before I filmed this video, and needless to say, I can turn a TIG welder into a plasma cutter, so this might be actually a lot harder of a job than I was expecting. But we'll get to that when the time comes. Right now, the time says that we are going to get this muffled mid-pipe installed in the car. And just like the catalytic converter, there isn't much to be said. There are these two bolts on this flange that connect to the high flow cat that we installed. And then right here, that exhaust hanger that wasn't being used underneath the car, this is actually going to allow for a bolt to thread into this hole. Not sure if you can see those threads, but there are definitely threads inside that hole, so we can put it inside of that exhaust hanger that wasn't being used, throw a bolt in there, tighten it down, and this should be held up. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll get right back to you. Here we are after having installed the mid pipe. So here you can see the new catalytic converter bolted up to the mid pipe. As much as I do want to praise ISR, the mid pipe did seem to bind a little bit while I was going ahead and bolting it in. Whether or not that is normal, I do not know. This is the first exhaust I've ever put on a car, but it definitely did bind a little bit while installing it, so there was a little bit of a leak in between the two flanges, but simply just kept tightening it, and it definitely fits really good now. So don't be afraid to torque on those bolts on the catalytic converter flange. And as you can see right here, this is that exhaust hanger that wasn't getting used with the OEM exhaust. Again, not sure if it was OEM, but this is the new setup for an exhaust flange, and this whole setup is not going anywhere, which is nice because this bit of fabrication that we need to do to get to the Megan exhaust exit Might take a little bit more time than I was expecting. This has been a pretty full day so far. So next we're gonna go into the workshop where I have set up a little bit of practice for some TIG welding. And you can watch me burn some holes through some stuff before hopefully attempting to do a decent job on the rest of this exhaust. See you inside. Okay, well, here is the little setup that we have for practicing TIG welding. As you can see, a little bit of the scrap exhaust that I did grind off earlier. I can show you a little bit of video of that right here. It was done previously to starting this exhaust video that was done today. Due to the circumstances of life, the video timeline got a little messed up, but we have gotten these all ready to go for some practice before we go ahead and do the rest of our exhaust. So without further ado, just gonna do a little bit of practice on this bit of metal here. This is stainless steel as well. It's a little bit thicker, but it should still give me a good amount of practice before I go moving to this much thinner wall exhaust pipe. The machine makes a lot of noise, so there won't be much talking. I'll probably just do a time lapse right here and throw in a little bit of music. So enjoy watching me hopefully not burn holes through this very thick stainless steel. A lot of time has passed between the last clip in this video and now. We've just not had time, we've been away from this shop, and we've just really had a hard time in getting the process of this TIG welding down. As you can see by all of these nasty pieces just with holes and booger welds and all that, we've just had a really hard time with it. So finally, this is the last practice weld that we did, and all the way around the diameter of the pipe looks about like that. It's not the greatest weld, trust me. Very much understand that that is still a bad weld, but what it is a weld. It's not Swiss cheese like this. So we were getting kind of discouraged there over the month or so. We were thinking that we might have to take it to an exhaust shop to get welded for the last little extension of our exhaust. But thankfully, it seems like we're getting the process down to a point where I think we're going to go ahead with this. We're going to start getting underneath the car, getting our flanges, getting our pipes, and kind of seeing what sort of fabrication that we need to do. And that's probably where we're going to go in the next clip of this video. Of course, I'm going to still sit here, been here for about 3 hours or so, give and take, in practicing all these welds. We might sit here a little bit longer, see if we can't dial in some of these settings, and just see if we can't dial in on these hands a little bit better. There's such a disconnect. You can watch someone on YouTube or on the internet do TIG welding and just dab that little filler rod in there and really smoothly go around it all. But until you do it yourself, it's really hard to understand. So anyways, we'll see you in the next clip. We're gonna head underneath the car, start seeing what we're gonna do with our exhaust flange, and see what sort of bends we're gonna need to make to get to the Megan Racing exhaust tip on our S13. Okay, so here we are. Finally, after all that practice, we can go ahead and start fabricating the last little bit of our exhaust that we need. We have our 3-inch Vibrant Performance flange right here with some bolts. We need to go ahead and bolt that down to take up the amount of space that it is going to take up when it is actually on the car, so that we can go ahead and see how this piece of exhaust pipe is going to fit underneath here. As you can see right above the flange there is this little whoop-de-doo in the subframe. We could attempt to tuck the exhaust pipe up underneath that, but I am not expecting the golden standard for the fabrication skills in this little segment here, so we're not going to get too fancy. We're just going to try and get this thing on. So we're probably just going to take a little, it'll be for you, a left-hand turn right here. And we're going to go ahead, get under the car, and get that all marked up with a Sharpie. Then we'll go ahead and try to weld it on video. There might be some skips in this footage. We're not too terribly confident with our welding and fabrication. If we skip around, we may have just gotten a little frustrated, but that is what we're going to be doing, is putting this flange on, getting this pipe fitted up as best as we can with Sharpie marks so that we know the orientation of it before welding. And then here in a little bit, we should be able to show you this piece of exhaust pipe actually bolted onto the car. Okay, so here we are currently. Instead of using just this 45 right off this flange here, we went ahead and put in this little 8-inch or so straight section. And that's going to help us in getting around this little subframe area right here. So once we get this welded to that flange, then we're going to go ahead and figure out how we're going to get this around the subframe. It looks like it's going to clear just like that, and then once that clears, it's going to put us in about this area over here. We'll probably do another straight section off of our 45, and that will get us into this area, and that'll be in the future. We'll worry about it then. Until then, we're going to go ahead and get this finalized with some TIG weld around this flange, and then, like I said, get this 45 on. So we'll see you here in just a second once we are figuring that out. Okay, so we've gotten our pieces just tack welded together. As you can see, this flange right here welded a lot different than these test pieces. So really boogery, really nasty, but it is held together. Then we went ahead and tack welded these two pipe pieces together. These two pieces welded together a lot better, much like these pieces, of course, because it's the exact same thickness. So with all of this tacked together, we're going to go back underneath the car and figure out where from here we need to continue our piping to continue this process of test fitting, tack welding, test fitting, tack welding, and continuing on until we get to our exhaust tips. So let's go ahead and figure out our next move from here. As you can see, this is where the exhaust exits out to right now. And we were messing around with trying to figure out the next extension that we were going to make coming off of this, but we're thinking the best plan of attack is going to be fabricating a little exhaust hanger. We pulled this off of the old exhaust that came off the car. We are going to try and get this mounted to the car where it will sit once everything is said and done. And we're going to do that so that we know the gap that we need to make between right there and right there. As it sits right now, it's hard to judge which piece of exhaust pipe we need to actually use to bridge this gap. So our buddy came up with the idea of using this little piece right here. What we're gonna do is put a rubber pad between this piece right here and the actual exhaust flange itself to keep from vibrating too much and to keep from potentially rusting in the future. Not sure what sort of material this is, but these could potentially rust if they touch each other over a length of time. So we're going to go ahead and get that little pad. We're going to put this on, and then we are going to run a bolt down through these two holes. With that done, then we are going to get the old exhaust hanger and we are going to weld it somewhere on this little pad. And that will help us in figuring out where this what was I even saying? Oh yeah. So with that done, that will help us figure out where we are going to mount it on the car. So we're going to go ahead and get that all done up. We will hang it from this hanger, and then we'll see which exhaust pipe we're going to need to use to bridge that gap. We'll be back with you in a little bit. Okay, please forgive the low light conditions. This took quite a bit longer than we were expecting. Partly due to me not actually lining this up correctly on the first tack weld, but it's in now, and it seems like we've gotten it pretty well centered up on the bumper here. It's not going to sit flush against the bumper. We still need to put in a piece to bring it down just like that a little bit, but as you can see, if we get underneath the car, that hanger is on, and we just have a hammer dangling out right now to keep it level. But now we have an idea of how we need to go ahead and connect this point to this point. So that's our next step. We're going to go ahead and grab some pipe, see which piece of our little builder's kit is going to fit the best, and then we're more than likely going to have to modify it quite a bit, but that is the next step. So let's go ahead and see how this is going to work. Here we are at the end of the night. We're going to be calling it here for now. So as you can see, we tack welded another piece of the pipe to help bridge this little gap, and the last little bit here, we've just been working with this piece of pipe. It's a weird angle, so we've been grinding it. We're not done with it yet, but we are calling it for tonight. This is theoretically just going to slip up between these two pieces right here, and it's going to take some finagling because there is that gap right there that we're trying to work on, but that will get done tomorrow. So see you in the morning or afternoon, depending on how long we end up sleeping in. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll go ahead and get this last piece all fabricated, and then we'll show you as we get that fit up. Here we are the next day, and we've been working on this angle for quite a while that we left last night. When we said that we might not get everything on film in terms of getting all this fitted together, this is the reason why. This angle right here was just the most frustrating thing in the world to try and fit up, and you can see there's still a little bit of a gap right here. It's going to be interesting when we try to get this fully welded up. Those gaps like that are really hard to fill in. At least for us, we haven't gotten that down yet. We tend to burn through the material when there's a big gap like that. So that's going to be interesting. But we have gotten the exhaust fit up pretty much how we like it. The only thing that we noticed is now that we have this fully mocked up, is that when you are at an angle right about here, you can see the fade on the exhaust tip here. It goes from gold to silver, and we don't really like that you can see that fade right there. So we're going to cut back on one of these straight sections just about 1/4 of an inch, and that's going to bring this back just a little bit. It's going to help with the alignment on our exhaust hanger up here. It's a little canted right now, and we think that'll just look a lot better. So we'll get back to you once we've gotten that cut. All right, here we are after having cut off maybe just 1/4, half an inch off of the length of the exhaust. It's not going to sit like this, don't worry. It's kind of slanted right now. It's not going to sit like that once we have everything tightened and this whole assembly back here for the exhaust hanger is tightened up. I don't know, it still looks a little long. We'll see once it's all tightened up. I think we're just gonna call it for now. In the future, if we want to, we actually can still take off some length off of the exhaust. But for now, I think we're gonna go ahead and start doing some finalizing welds. You can see we got it all tacked up and ready to go. This is generally how it's going to sit once it's on the car. So we're going to take it off, we're going to bring it back in the workshop, and we'll start doing some of those finalizing welds. And we'll show you that process. It's not going to be pretty. I guarantee it's not going to be pretty, but we're going to try our best to get this all welded up and not have it full of pinholes. So we'll see you there. And here we are with the final product. The welds are not great. Didn't think they were going to be when starting this, but we did learn quite a bit during this process. They are holding, and that is the only thing that matters to us for the time being. We do not have the little rubber pad right now for this little exhaust hanger piece, but we will get that in the future. Now we're going to go ahead and get this on the car one final time. We're going to bolt it down and get our sound clip for the comparison of all of our audio clips. We hope this will be informational to you if you decide to either buy the ISR catalytic converter, the ISR mid-pipe, or are curious about making your own exhaust. If you are not watching this video for informational purposes and are just coming along on the journey of building this vehicle, thanks a ton for sticking around. It is really fun to learn how to do new things using this car as a catalyst. If you haven't followed us already on Instagram, we'll leave our Instagram name on the screen right now. It would be great to have you. During the process of building this exhaust system and working on our videos, we're always posting there and show little sneak peeks to what we're working on, and also give little extra informational bits that you may find interesting. So go ahead and please follow us there. And with that, we hope you have a good day or night, depending on what it is for you when you are watching this. We hope to see you in the next video on the KA24E Turbo series. And as always, take it easy.